ASP.NET is the primary website technology available in Visual Studio. ASP.NET has been around for years. It debuted in the first version of .NET back in 2002. Web technologies are seeing a period of phenomenal growth in tools, frameworks, and philosophy. Microsoft is adopting its ASP.NET tools to fit into this new era of web application development. In this movie, I'll show you how to create basic ASP.NET applications. To learn more about this fascinating web framework, check out the other ASP.NET courses here on lynda.com. For this demonstration, I will switch to Visual Studio and create a new web project. To create my new project, I will open the File menu and choose New Project. The language for this project will be Visual C#, so I'll choose that node, and then the Web node. Look at all these project types. In this movie, I'm going to look at the empty web application and the web forms application. In later movies, I'll look at the MVC4 web apps and the dynamic data entities web applications. For this demo, I will put my files in the exercise folder and leave the names at the default. Make sure I choose the empty web application and then click OK. Because I picked the empty web application, I didn't get very many files inside my project. I have a web config and a reference folder and a few other items. I need to add a web form to this application. To do that, I will right-click and choose Add Web Form. Now, there are a lot of other types of items you can add to this project. Let me show those to you. Right-click, Add New Item. And if you click on this Web node over here, you'll see about 30 items listed as the items that I can add to an ASP.NET web application. I'm going to choose this first one, Web Form. I'll call it Default, and then click Add. Visual Studio creates a file called default.aspx and adds a child file called default.aspx.cs and another one called .designer.cs. We're going to work in these first two files mostly in this example. When I select the default.aspx file, I can see the source. This is my HTML. Since this is also a server-side technology, I can inject or add server-side components that get created when the page is posted back to the server. I can do that by adding this ASP colon and then the type name here. If I want a button, I can choose it from this list. Now, this is not ready to use yet. I need to add some other attributes to this. So you might find it easier to work with the drag and drop designer. To do that, I'm going to click on the split button on the bottom of the screen. And then I'm going to open my toolbox and find the button control and drag that over either to the HTML section or to the designer surface. There's my button, and there's the extra attributes that were added by Visual Studio. It has an ID equal button 1 that gives me a programmatic handle to this item, run it equal server to turn this into a server-side control, and the text to show. I'll change this to hello. I'd also like to add a hyperlink. To do that, I'm going to drag over this server-side hyperlink, like that. I'm going to start by having this link to a page within this project. I don't have any more pages yet, so let's add another one. I'll right-click on my project and choose Add Web Form. We'll call it About Us. Type a little bit of HTML in here. And now I'm ready. So I'll go back to my default ASPX page, click on this hyperlink, change the text to say About Us, and then I'll click on this Navigate URL property. If you don't see them in this order, you might have to click on the alphabetical button as opposed to the Categorize button in the property grid. Then here in the Navigate URL property, I'll click on this Build button, the one with the 3 dots on it, and choose from some of my items inside my project. I'll choose aboutus.aspx. Now I'm ready to test this application. To do that, I can debug it like any other .NET application. I can press F5, which will start the application, load it into the default browser, attach a debugger to the browser, and then show me the UI. Look at that. I can click on this About Us hyperlink, and it takes us over to the aboutus.aspx page. Next, I want to write some code to change the text on the About Us, and I want to also change the location where it's going to go when I click on the hyperlink. I'll do that in the C# code. So let me shut down the browser, return back to Visual Studio, and then I am going to Press F7 on this page to switch to the code behind file. That is the default.aspx.cs file. In the page load event, I'm going to modify that control. The name of my control is hyperlink 1. Now, when I load the page, we're going to programmatically change the text and the location where the hyperlink navigates to. I'll press F5 to debug the application. The new text is there, and when I click on it, instead of going to the About Us page, it takes me to the lynda.com website. Now, the code that I wrote is server-side code, and that means that I can debug it just like any other .NET code. We haven't seen the debugging chapter yet. It's later in this course, but let me show you briefly how that works. I'll switch to Visual Studio. Move to this line of code where it says hyperlink.txt, and then click over here in the margin or press the F9 key to turn on a breakpoint. Now, I'll switch back to the browser, click the back button, and refresh this page. I pressed F5 inside the browser, which caused the page to refresh, which caused the page load event to fire, and now you see that I'm in my code, and I can hover over this text and see what's currently assigned to it. I can change the value while I'm sitting at this breakpoint, like that, and then press F5 to continue running the application, and you see that it's modified the text on the fly while I was debugging the application. You can do a lot more sophisticated UI with ASP.NET. For instance, you can work with the calendar control. Drag that down here and drop it on the page, and then choose auto format to make it look nicer, or a different color at least. Click on OK. And then I'm going to put what's called a label control on here. There it is. I'll drag that over. And then I'm going to write a little bit of code on this calendar event. I'm going to look for the lightning bolt and then go to the selection change, then double click here. Now what will happen is when somebody picks a new date on the calendar, I want to update the label. There we go. I'm going to take the current selected date, turn it into a long date string, and show that on the page. Remove this breakpoint by clicking on the red dot, and then press F5 to run the application. Choose a new date, and just like that, I've got a working calendar. Of course, Microsoft is generating the HTML on the page. If you right-click on this and choose to view source, you can actually see the HTML that was created by Microsoft. Wow, that's a lot of HTML. Let me do one more example. I'll show you a more fancy type of web application, one that Microsoft has a lot of pre-built files for you. I'll right-click here and choose to add a new project. And this time I'm going to choose the ASP.NET Web Forms application. I'll leave this at the defaults and click OK. And then let's look at my Solution Explorer. Look at how many files were created for that site. There's an app data folder, an app start folder, a content folder. There is a series of jQuery scripts. I'll talk more about this later in the course. There's a ton of stuff, including a default page, something called a site.master, and many other pieces. This site looks great when you run it. Let me show you what it looks like. I'm going to right-click here and make this my startup project in Visual Studio. That tells Visual Studio to compile this one and make it the start one when I press the debug key. Now when I press F5, it will open my new site. And here I can click on the home link, the about link, or the contact link. Very nice. I have one more thing I want to show you, and that is how Microsoft's built all these features into the application. Let's say that I want to log into this website. Currently, when I click on this login, it has me type in a name and a password. But a lot of us today are using other services like Twitter or Facebook or Google or Microsoft accounts to log into our sites. Let me show you how easy these are to set up in ASP.NET Web Forms. I'll close down my browser, switch back to Visual Studio, open this folder here, the app start folder, and find this auth config.cs file. Then I'll scroll down to this one line of code and uncomment it. Take out these two slashes at the beginning of the line, and run the application by pressing F5. Now, I've done nothing else, but watch what happens. I click on Login. I click on Use Google Service to log in. It will redirect me to Google. Now I've logged into Google. It's asking me if I want to allow that site to have access to the name and password, or the token, I should say. I'll say yes, allow, which redirects me back to my website, and now it's asking me to create a username for this current web application. I'll click on Login, and there I am logged in to Gmail. Now later I can log off and then choose to log in, click on Google, and instead of having to go back to the Google website, I'm automatically validated by their server. Very nice. As you can see, there are a lot of ways of working with web apps in Visual Studio. The key point today is that Visual Studio provides all the tools you need to edit, build, debug, and deploy websites.